Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the fifth and final Adroit Project Engineering in this series. Today we're going to be chatting about a topic called creating wizards and associated templates. If someone can just sound off in the comments and just let me know that all the sound is working good. I'd like to thank everybody for joining today. We're going to be looking at wizards and how I go about creating them. For those of you that have been playing along, I'm still going to be using the Adroit configuration exam as my example. I would recommend that everybody have a look at it. The version I'm going to be working in is Adroit 10.05. It's an unreleased version at the moment. We're coming up on release for it. We're very excited about it. And yeah, when you guys get a chance, please download and have a look at our new version. So we're going to start off today just by defining what a wizard and a template is. There seems to sometimes I find when I give training, when our training courses, I get asked, what's the difference between a wizard and a template? Where do we use them? So I've got a short answer, really. A definition of a wizard is a graphical depiction of an object or equipment that can deploy multiple instances of that wizard on a graphic form in the designer. So typically, what this means is a wizard is a unique kind of graphic form. It's not a graphic form. Has a different structure to it, different functionality, but you work very similar to a graphic form in the Smart UI. Typically, what you would do is you'd create a wizard graphic form, place an object on it, and then assign a data element that would drive a property, and then change that hard-coded data element into a substitution, which we'll look at in a little bit. A template, on the other hand, is a graphic form which can be assigned predefined substitutions in the operator /runtime. So what that means is that you would have when you drop a wizard down, it would prompt you in the designer for your substitutions, for what data elements you want to connect to it. That is done at design time. And then a template is a graphical form that is launched in the operator, and then we assign substitution at that level, at the operator's runtime. So I hope that doesn't confuse you too much. We'll be looking at a practical example of this a little bit later on. But I thought I'd just put a little definition down of what these guys are and what they do. Please, if there are any questions, please sound off in the comments. And I'll try and address them as best I can. All right, so when designing a wizard, one of the first things we have to do is we have to look at defining our substitution. So defining the substitution is for those of you that aren't sure what I mean by substitution, in an Adroit data element, I can have the data source's name. Typically that's Adroit, followed by dot, the agent's name that I'm looking at, followed by another dot, and then the slot. Now I can replace bits of that string with substitution points, which allows me to build those data elements up. But before we do that though, I just want to take a bit of a step back and just have a chat a little bit about our context model. Now, might not make sense why I'm saying context model right now, but typically a context model is quite important when it comes to naming conventions. So we use this to build up our agent names. We can then use this context model then to break down our data element into its component parts and then create substitutions within those component parts. So the example you can see on the screen there, this is the context model that I've used for my configuration exam. Those of you that have been following along with the different videos that I've been doing have heard me mention this and have seen an example of this. But typically it's a hierarchical structure. So context models are one-to-many. And it starts off with the enterprise at the top. In this case, it's the name of the company that I'm working with. So ABC Spice. ABC Spice has multiple sites. The site I'm using as an example here is the juice plant. And his abbreviation or a site ID is JUP. So each site will then get a name and a unique ID. We then move into the area of that site. In this case, it's batching, and his unique ID is BAT. Guys, again, this is something that you can define in your FDS. This is just the structure I've gone for. I will show you an example of that structure and the way I document it in a little bit. So I've stopped there or paused there at area. The next one is quite important, is the equipment name. Now, an equipment name, in this case, feeder A, is a screw conveyor or screw feeder, if you will, and his abbreviation is FDA. Now, I could theoretically then create this piece of equipment, and that equipment has predefined signals, and I can create an object out of it. So what we can do then is we can then create our substitution around the site and the area and the equipment name, but the signals on our object could then be hard-coded. For those of you that have worked with our Maps product, you'll know a little bit of what I'm talking about here. In the Maps product, we typically have equipments, VSDs, valves, pumps, etc. And then we have hard-coded signals. In this case, one of the signals I've used for an example here is a set point, which is the target that I want my equipment to run to. And its abbreviation or its unique ID is SP. So once we've taken this and we've defined this context model, what we can then do is we can then go along and use it to define a naming convention. So you'll see inside here that I've got an agent naming structure that I've defined in my document. In this case, it has 4 parts. The first part will be the site ID, as you saw in the previous example, that would be JUP. The area ID, which would be batching, in this case would be BAT. The equipment ID, which is feeder A, that would be FD. And then the final value would be a signal ID, which would be PV. So I've now defined my structure. You'll see now what I've done in the bottom here is I've gone along and then I've used the smart UI mechanism for a substitution, which is an open and closed curly bracket. So when I drop my wizard down or when I create a link to a template, I will be using these substitution in my naming convention to then request those particular tag substitutions. So I can come along here and I can create multiple of these feeder or conveyors objects within my structure, and I can then just add my IDs, the unique IDs for each one of those into that substitution there, and that would then create a fully qualified data element, which would then allow me to bring back that information. So this is typically how I would go about defining my substitution. So where I then go and create this is, again, for those of you that have been playing along, you know that I like to bring up my FDS, my functional design spec. Inside there, you'll see that we've got the structure itself, the naming structure itself, and I've then gone and defined what each one of those structures means. So there's my site name, my area, my equipment, and my signal. And as you saw in the previous example, we get a name and an abbreviation or ID for each one of those. So in my area here, you'll note I've got 6 areas: batching, filtration, bottling, pump station 1 through 3, and then what each one of those can be. So I can then start defining that. There you'll see I've got my feeder A, so that's my piece of equipment. That's the one we're going to be working with today with his abbreviation. But inside here, we'll have multiple bits of equipment that we're working with in our plant. Obviously, this is something that you would define beforehand. Very useful structure, this in terms of engineering. And then what each one of our signals then. So I will have a running, stopped, tripped, started, etc. signal for each one of my bits of equipment. I can assign to any bit of equipment. So I can then build up a tag name based on that. And then I know that these abbreviations are what I will then put in that substitution then to create a fully cohesive data element path. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just move along, and we're going to go and move into the practical session part of this. I have prepared an example of what I'm talking about. So we will start looking at that as soon as I transition this over. All right, so as I said before, we're in Adroit Smart UI 10.050. This is my design environment where I'm going to be creating them. You'll note that I've got my Enterprise Manager open. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder structure that I use then for containing all the wizards, and the faceplates that are associated with those wizards will then be kept within this folder structure. I've started off with the folder structure and object model. This is maybe another video that we'll talk about, is creating objects, but I've used this to just contain all of my wizards that I use across, wizards and faceplates that I use across my entire project. The one we're looking at here today is our water pump. Sorry, I did say feeder A. I shouldn't have said feeder A. I should have said water pump. I do apologize for that, but basically same idea here. So really what we're doing is I create a water pump. You'll notice that I've got a version number behind it. That means that if I come along and I add a new type of VSD or new functionality to this particular object or piece of equipment, water pump, I can then just increment my versioning, and I can still maintain equipment that runs on the older version with newer versions coming in. Alright, so I've created that structure inside there, a folder structure. Within there you'll see that I've got three different graphics. The one at the bottom here is a water pump underscore v1, so that is the wizard. It's a wizard file. You'll notice his icon is a little bit different. So when creating a wizard, you would need to right click, create wizard is your option. If I were to select that, it would then go ahead and create a blank wizard for me, which I can go and start placing things on. So let's just give it a name. I'm going to call this water pump underscore v1.1. Oops, that's invalid. It doesn't accept the dot in there. Water pump version 1, and we'll just say 1.1 just for now. All right, so I'm not going to go through the whole creative process, but typically what I would do is that has now created a new wizard for me. I can then go along and start creating my wizard by using the different objects that I've got in my toolbox. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go and place a Windows form label down. Place him in there. There he is. All right. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to be able to give my wizard, when I place it, I want a description for what this piece of equipment is going to be. So in this case, what I'm going to do is, first thing we do is when we place an object down, is we give him a name. In this case, it'll be LBL, and I'll call him description. Description, is that correct? Please excuse my horrendous spelling. Just having a quick look and seeing what's happening on the comments field here. Morning, Ruben. Right, so we've placed our object down, we've given him a name. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to use a property here called doc. I like doc a lot. I like to use it a lot, this property quite a lot. It makes life a lot easier. Typically what happens is we'll come in here and I'll say doc to the top. So that will dock that label across the whole graphic form, across it. Its width, you can adjust its height as required. I'm going to change his alignment. I'm not a big fan of text alignment using the center, placing the object in the center. That's again just purely an aesthetic choice on my side. For those of you that saw my last thing, I always say you always start top from left to right, top to bottom. So the first place you will look at is the top left hand side of your graphic form, and that's where I like to have that label placed. We can make a few other changes to it. Set his back color if you want. Excuse my ringtone there, I forgot to turn my phone off. You can change his color around however you want it. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to first just show you guys an example of a static substitution. Remembering that curly brackets is how we define our substitution. So in my text field, this is where I want to create a substitution. I'm going to open a curly bracket. Let's just get this spelling right. Description. And we're going to close our curly brackets. And then when I hit my enter button, I get a little message that pops up. You have entered a text in curly brackets. Do you want to create a static substitution? And I say, yes, I do. And now when I drop this wizard down, I will get a field that'll say description, and I can put in any static substitution I want in there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put another label down, and we're going to come in here and this label over here. And if we go along and we do the same, this guy is going to display the process variable from the field. So readings from the field. And this will be called a PV. I'll set him to dock as well again to the top. And let's make his back color white. Black forecolor. And again, put him in the middle. So one of the things we can do here as well is this guy's going to have a dynamic substitution in him. So I like to use put in my label field what I'm going to be showing there. So in here I'll put a PV space, and then we'll put in typically how many value or characters I'm expecting to use. And now I've got a good example of what I'm really expecting to see on my graphic. And guys, obviously this will be overwritten by whatever dynamically I change this. What we're going to do here is I'm now going to go along, and the way I add a dynamic substitution is I first go and place a new behavior on this object. It's going to be a display value. There's our display value opens up, and I'm just going to go along and I'm going to go and grab one of the tags that I know already exists. Typically I will have a set of tags for that equipment before working with creating the front end, before creating the graphic. this one here, there it is, JUP BAT FDA PV, and I'll click finish, and that gives me the fully qualified data element path. All right, so now I can go along and start editing that. So first things first, I can just take out that, we don't need him, and in here this is going to be open, and this will be our site ID, close curly brackets, then it's going to be our area ID, close those curly brackets, and then my equipment name, equipment ID, will then also be dynamic, equipment ID. We close those curly brackets. So now you see that I've actually built the string up. I've left the signal as the process variable because this is hard coded. If my tag name changes, or if the structure of my tag name changes, obviously this piece, this particular wizard will not work. What you can also do, guys, although it does then mean quite a bit of work, another way to do this would be to highlight that whole lot. I'm just going to take him out. What we can also do here is I can just say PV data element if you want, but I like to work within a structured format, so that would just then prompt me for a data element which would then have to be provided. But I like to hard code my signals. It just means it makes it a lot easier when dropping these guys down to follow a particular context model and a context structure. All right, last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to come along here and I'm going to place my string formatting. Please note what I've done here. You'll see that I've, in my string formatting, outside my curly brackets here, in the string formatting, I've placed that text. That means that anything that comes through on this particular data element will be placed in those curly brackets there, and I will be prefixing it with PV. All right. Okay, so that's sort of the idea. Click finish, and that's it. That is now, this is a small little example that we can do. I'm just going to optimize my graphic form by clicking on the optimize graphic form size. So it'll shrink the graphic form so that it only contains those two, and we can then save our graphic. And now if I were to go along and drop him down, let's just get rid of this guy. So now what we can do is this new one, I can take him along, drop him, and paste the wizard down. And this will now then prompt me for a description. So I can say feeder A, site name is juice plant, JUP, my area ID is batching, BAT. And please note, guys, as I go along creating these and entering these, you'll notice that these strings then fill up on the right here, and you'll notice that it's still red. And that is because I haven't completed my data element string. Once I've done that, there it goes green. And I now know that if I click finish, there is my little wizard that I've created, an example of a wizard. And because I've set my labels inside there to dock, to fill, when I stretch this guy out, you'll notice that he sizes along with my wizard. Okay, one of the other things we can do as well is I can update this wizard. So if I come back to my water pump, my original wizard instance, I can come along here, and if I edit this guy, and let's say I'm going to go and place a tooltip on him, let's just grab our substitution here. I'll copy him so I don't have to remember and write it out all the time. I'm going to go along, I'm going to create a tooltip on here. Under the tooltips data element, I'm going to paste that data element in, but I'm going to take out that value and put in unit as an example. So inside here we can then place that unit of measurement inside here, and then if I click finish and save it, I will then get prompted to update all instances of this wizard, which I can go ahead and say, yes, I'd like to update those wizards, please. I'll say, all right, to avoid losing changes, to unsave graphic forms, first save all graphic forms. So this is important. I can't remember if I saved my last one, so I'm going to cancel him. I'm going to go back to my graphic form here. I'm just going to give him a quick save there, just to make sure that he's saved. And then we're just going to go along and redo our save here. We say yes. Yeah, no, we've saved everything. We're happy to go. Okay, it then says, right, where do you want to search for all instances? I just say, well, I know that I've created it in our choose plant, so I just want you to search in there for me, please. It'll then return that graphic form. I can then click on the checkbox here, which will allow me to update that particular graphic form. Please note, guys, we do have a reset instance to current wizard size. So I've adjusted the size of that wizard, but I want to reset him to what his original size was. So I say, fine, we're going to click on him, and we update. And there we go. We've updated him. So now if we run our graphic here, I go and hover, there it tells me what that particular kilogram, and this could be, that text could be anything inside there. All right, so that's sort of the idea of how to create and deploy a wizard. I'm just going to close this guy. Now what I want to do is I want to go to one that I've actually done a bit of work on. So a fully realized graphic. You'll notice that we've got quite a few different objects on this wizard here that I've used. There's my description. You'll see he's docked in there. Above it is a little graphical representation of my water pump. This water pump here has a color behavior on it and an execute command, which we'll get to in a little bit, but let's just have a look at the color. So inside here, if we open him up, you'll notice that my signal ID has changed. It's not process variable. This is actually displaying not just the process variable, but we're displaying the status. So what is the status of that pump? Is it when the bit is true, the pump is running, and I display a green on the overlay. Alternatively, when he's off, I change it to transparent. I'm not a massive fan of using green and red to display stopped and started, red particularly. Typically, red is used as a warning or an alarm indication. So I don't like to use red. I'd rather just leave the object to be transparent. That way, the operator can then quite easily define between a stop device and a device that is in an alarm state. So I don't use red to show the stop state. That's a little bit of information that when I engineer. So let's not get too sidetracked here. Okay, so that's our color behavior that I've placed on the equipment, and you'll see there I've got my little status symbol. So if we come along here, if we drop him down, you'll notice that I've got a little label here that says unit. So if we go along and we click, and please note, guys, what I've done here, my behaviors, I've actually changed the name. So when I hover over it, you'll see this is a display value, but I've actually gone and given it a name. So I've said, yeah, PV unit, and there's our equipment ID PV unit. Click finish on him. I just want to check something here. Yeah, there's a tooltip on this guy as well. He doesn't display the unit now anymore like on the previous example. What this guy displays is the agent's description. So what I do is I pull back the agent, I'll put a description for this particular pump, the agent description, and I can then display that above and beyond the actual description, the static description in there, guys. This description could be just a PNID ID number if you want. I know some guys like to put that on their skaters so that they can reference what equipment they're looking at versus their drawings. So that does give you a little bit of flexibility, but I've just gone with the description there. Then you'll see down here that we've got a little blue underlined text. That is our set point. So in this guy, his behaviors, he has a SP, which is a display value. Again, our signal ID has changed, our hard-coded signal ID, so SP. But notice that my equipment ID, area, and site IDs will all stay the same because this piece of equipment will belong to all the same things. It's just the signal that will change. You'll also note that I've got this guy on here. I've used a blue foreground with an underline. I like to use that because a lot of people are used to clicking on links. In fact, you'll even see in our task label here, anything you can click on is blue with an underline. It's anybody that's worked on web pages, anything like that before, it's a good indication. It also helps my operators so that they know what they can click on. It gives them something recognizable to click on. It's all part of the pattern recognition of our high performance specifications that I spoke about last week, or I believe the week before, maybe even. High performance HMI, it's an ISO standard. I would recommend everybody having a look at it. All right, but in our operator action, again, what this guy does is he changes our set point, which is written out to the PLC, and the PLC will then try and match that in its PID curve. And then the process variable will be what the actual, how the that particular device has achieved it. Inside here, again, you'll see that I've kept my signal for that set point. But please note that my slots have now changed, where I've got a value slot for my data element that I'm changing, and then the minimum and maximum range for that particular set point. And this is set to a data entry. All right. So there's a couple of the behaviors with their substitution in it. Nothing out of the ordinary. We've got a few other bits and pieces in here. I've got an average here. This is a couple of slots that I like to use with these analog agents. In the tooltip, again inside here, you'll see that I've specified a number of different data elements in my tooltip behavior. These slots that they're looking at is the slots for an analog agent. It's our statistics slots. I've set up my statistics to read for 10 minutes. So what this will do is it'll display the maximum and minimum values for the last 10 minutes, as well as my standard deviation of this analog agent, and then also the actual, you'll see inside here, is our average for 10 minutes. This is the slot that displays the process variables average. Okay. So we've placed quite a few objects on our screen. We've put our substitution in. The next thing we want to be able to do and we want to chat about is our faceplate. So I'm just going to go ahead and close down this guy here. We don't need him anymore. And we're just going to delete him. So now what I do is I'm going to go along and I'll just delete him. We don't need this wizard. Let's keep our folder structures nice and neat. So what I've done here is I've now got a faceplate. Guys, please note this faceplate is just a standard graphic form that I've created. Create it the same way you would any other. Right click and just say create graphic form. What then happens is it then creates a graphic form. Inside this graphic form, I've then gone and placed a whole bunch of objects and named them. It looks very similar to our wizard because a lot of that data I want to pull through. We then have our control for our pump, and then a couple of controls for a few other bits and pieces. So this graphic form is very similar to the setup, very similar to the way that our wizard is set up. Basically what we do is under our water pump, so here you'll see that this is a description. This is actually a hard-coded description. So this will take whatever we supply static text, and it will then fill that in. So this would typically read feeder A or water pump or whatever it is, and that will then appear here. Our process variable, again, we want to display that in our faceplate. Set up pretty much the same as our wizard. Again, if I click on him and open him up, there is our set points. I'm not going to go through all of them again, but the same idea here as our wizard, where we've gone and worked within our where's our thing? There's our outline, and here's our object, and we can see inside here that there is our color behavior. Okay, so pretty much the same, with the exception of our two start and stops and our pump alarm. This could be not necessarily a pump alarm, this could be an interlock, whatever you've decided that label is going to be. Inside here is fairly standard, an operator action. Again, this is a bit that is written out to the PLC, so I just turn that bit on and it is latched in the PLC, and then I pulse it on my side, so that will then set that boolean true for us, set that digital true for us. Okay, and similar, but with our stop button, same sort of thing, just a different bit that we're turning on. This is the bit, the signal that writes out to stop our device. Okay, so once we've configured all of this, we now want to be able to link this faceplate to our water pump. So what we do is we use a execute command to do that. I've already got it set up. I will be placing my click on the object itself. Guys, if you want, you can put a button down or have one of the other labels with the execute command on it. But in our case here, we're going to put our execute command there. Guys, you'll notice that I work with this in two places. I prefer the contents view inside here, so we can select different components. We can see a nice overview of it. Alternatively, we can work by clicking on our task icon and selecting the child behaviors and then navigating to where our object is. But I'm just going to use our content view. It's I prefer it. From here, I can also add and remove behaviors by just right clicking. I can add a new behavior or remove an existing behavior. But I've already got my behavior set up, so there's my execute command. I'm just going to double click on him. Inside here, first thing we do is we specify a command. In our case, this is going to be opening a graphic form. The graphic form we're going to be opening is the faceplate dash water pump. We're going to be opening up as a motor list form. For those of you that don't know, you get two kinds of forms, dialogues as we refer to them in the development environment. It's a modal and a motor list. A modal form is exactly what this behavior window looks like. I can't interact with anything until I close them. A motor list form will allow me to right click or to click on a background and open up another instance of that graphic form, or to start something or click or interact with the environment behind it. So I prefer working with a motor list form. I'm going to tell the behavior that it must open up at mouse cursor. So what that means is wherever I've placed this particular water pump on my graphic form, where I click on him, that is where he will open. So I like that mouse cursor. Alternatively, you can just say center of the screen, and that will then open up at a predefined, in the center of your primary monitor, center screen. Alternatively, you can go and specify a custom location by checking on location and then specifying an X and Y. Obviously, that you need to be careful with that, because if you do open this up on a different resolution monitor, you might experience some problems there. All right, guys, so once we've browsed our form in, the next thing we need to do is we now need to link up our substitution. So by default, this alias tab for mine is available. If you don't see yours, please just click on the advanced view, and the advanced view will then open up that alias tab up at the top here, which you can then click on. And what will happen then is it will then go and return these areas. Now, typically what you'll find is when it returns it for the first time, like I said, I've set mine up already, but when it returns it for the first time, it'll bring back a blank set of inputs like this. Now, what we can typically do is we can come in here and we can browse in for our different data elements, but I don't want to do that. I want these to be changed. I want these guys to take their substitution from the wizard itself. So what I do is I use exactly the same substitution again, just to prompt the wizard to fill in. So area ID, Guys, it's also very important here that you use your case sensitive. If you have a different case, it will prompt you for an additional one. So if I had, for example, if I removed that space from there, I would get 2 area IDs, one with a space between the area and the ID and one without. So just make sure that you follow your naming standard. One of the big successes to a good successful SCADA project is being able to take something and reproduce it without flaw. So just keep that in mind. You want to be able to replicate a logic as many times as you can without introducing any issues or any discrepancies. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and fill in all these guys substitutions here. I'm just going to be using the exact same substitution because that's the way I've defined my substitution. I don't have to have different substitution. Everything will follow through. Equipment. Oops. You see here, this is my terrible spelling. The bane of our marketing department is my spelling, I'm sure. I'm sure Tanya and Samantha will agree with that. And then, oops, now you'll notice there, you'll see I've got a lowercase d there. So it's just, yeah, I know that you're not right. Just get rid of you for now. Just put a lowercase d in there. Make sure that all of that stays the same. Site ID. Cool. And there we go. We can now go ahead and we can click our finish button. And what this guy will do now is when I save him, I'm then gonna, no, we don't want to update anything. I have used him in my project in other places, but we're going to be creating a brand new instance. So we're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna drag my water pump down. Oops, sorry, wrong one. I'm gonna go ahead and drag my wizard and drop him down. Paste wizard. And there you'll see it is now prompting me for those descriptions. So these guys will go and create fully qualified paths to all my tags inside there. This guy's going to be called primary water pump or water pump. Site ID will be site is JUP, area is BAT, and my equipment ID here. I need to just quickly go and get that from my document. Just bear with me here. Water pump. There we go. Oopsie. And my water pump equipment is WTP. So I'm not using the feeders, the conveyor feeders. I'm using my water pump set of tags. And I go ahead and I click finish. Excuse me. And there it's placed my object down. I can go and save this graphic form. Now I'm going to go and open up in my operator. I'm just going to close this guy because we don't need him. And we're going to go and open up that graphic form that I've just created and edited. Oops. We need to log in here. Sorry guys, just excuse me. I need to log in. Alright. So under my servers, why am I not seeing my data sources? Interesting. Why am I not seeing my project? Haha, this is why you don't do things on the fly. Okay, so just give it a refresh. Has that brought it back? It has not. Interesting. Okay, we're going to quickly make a plan here. For some reason this is not pulling this up. Again guys, I do apologize. This is a new unreleased version that I am busy testing on here for our development department. hopefully, what are we on to 6? If we just close him up, I'm just going to relaunch our operator here. Right, so there we go. Hopefully this resolves our problem. Unless I've done something very wrong, which I don't think so. Yep, there we go. There's our projects. We just needed a refresh on there. I'm just going to open up this graphic that I've been working on now. So here is our object, and if we go and click on him, he will then go ahead and open up my faceplate. So we can go and create multiple water pumps, multiple instances of those water pumps, and we can then deploy them quite quickly and rapidly within our object. So what you'll see here is I've got another example of this, where I've created those pump stations. So if we open this guy up here, these are all the same objects. Each one is a different pump station. So there you'll see pump station 01, pump station 02, and here's our water pump. So if I go along and I click on this guy here, there it is, pump station 2. And if I give him pump station 1, I can then have multiple instances of those faceplates, and they're all opening up at the same time. So this is an example of where we deploy multiple instances of a wizard on a graphic form, and each one launches a faceplate, but it creates new instances of them with those different values and set points in it. All right, guys. So that pretty much brings me to the end of my little presentation here. I hope you guys found it educational. I'm just going to open it up to the comment section, so if you can let me know if there's any questions that you have. I'm more than glad to answer them. Yeah, these are great little tools. What we can do as well is using these particular things, we can then go ahead and start creating our object model. You'll see inside my designer here that I have created a new template, which is a water pump version 1, and I know that is tied to my wizards inside here. So for those of you that have started looking at object model, this is a great way to, sort of for an introduction to start building your objects. You first have a reproducible wizard, and then you start creating your objects, and this is one of the ways that I would recommend going about doing it. So yeah, as I said, that's pretty much my demo for the day. I'd just like to thank you very much for sharing your time. We hope you guys have learned something today. Can you please give us a like, and also hit the subscribe button, and then also click on the bell icon so that you can receive notifications and not miss any out on any of our live webinars. The next topic, I believe, which is tomorrow. Let me just have a look here. Our next topic tomorrow is Adroit Enterprise OEE, operator view connected to simulator and reporting. I'm not sure who's presenting that, but it does start at 11, so I encourage everybody to come along and have a look at that. And yeah, thanks very much, guys.